Hey guys, tonight we journey to the ancient streets of Carthage, sun-scorched, sea-wind swept, and absolutely not ready for modern tourists like you. Imagine stepping into a world where the air smells of salt, sweat, and fermented fish paste, and the first thing you see is a goat chewing on someone's laundry. Welcome, you're here now, and you're wildly unprepared. Your sandals are the wrong kind, your tunic is a joke, and the locals are already side-eyeing you like you just asked if they accept debit cards. You've landed in a powerhouse of the Mediterranean, a city of trade, warfare, cults, and politics, and absolutely none of it comes with air conditioning. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your location and local time in the comments. Let's see where everyone's tuning in from tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You've arrived at the edge of the Punic world sometime around the 3rd century BCE. Carthage is thriving. Its navy dominates the waves. Its merchants run half the known world's trade. Its taxes? Brutal. Its language? You won't understand a word. And you're standing right in the middle of it with sand in your sandals and no plan whatsoever. The harbour behind you stretches in a perfect half-moon, dotted with warships, merchant galleys, and the sharp, salty sting of brine in your nose. Every direction feels too loud. Bronze bells clang in temple towers. Barkers shout in Punic, haggling over purple dye and salted sardines. Children dash past you barefoot, chasing a clay ball straight through a cloud of donkey dung. Someone yells at you from a balcony. It's unclear whether they're offering a blessing, a warning, or asking why you're dressed like a Roman peasant. You wave awkwardly. They throw a fig. It misses. Barely. You duck into a side street hoping for shade. Instead, you find more heat. Sunlight reflecting off limestone walls, scorching the alley like a kiln. A cat darts between baskets. Flies hover around something unidentifiable near a doorway. And still, the sounds of the city throb around you. Sandals slapping cobblestones, traders clapping to get attention, even the low chant of temple acolytes from somewhere uphill. Fun fact, Carthage was laid out in grids centuries before Rome adopted the idea. The urban planning here is ancient but intentional, except you have no idea how to read any of it. You turn left where you should have gone right, and end up in a tannery district. Now the air smells less like fish, and more like hot urine and hide. You're sweating heavily. There's a general rule in Carthage. If you're not moving with purpose, you'll get questioned, ignored, or trampled. A cart bumps you from behind. The driver shouts something that may or may not translate to "Get out of the way, tourist." You stumble forward, tripping on a cobblestone that predates Plato. At some point a street boy sidles up and offers to lead you to an inn for a price. You decline, only for him to stick around and start loudly narrating your every move like a personal heckler. You stop. He stops. You sigh. He mimics the sigh, then picks his nose and flicks it at your feet. You're not winning here. The sun hangs high above the city's red-tiled roofs, and the heat reflects off every surface. There's no breeze, no shade, and no easy exit. A nearby shrine bell rings once, twice. You pass under a lintel carved with a crescent and palm, symbols of Tanit, the city's patron goddess. A woman near the shrine eyes you cautiously, then mutters something into her scarf. You're starting to get the sense that you're not just lost, you're a spectacle. Scholars remain divided on how open Carthaginian society was to foreigners. Some argue it was tolerant, especially for trade purposes. Others suggest it was notoriously insular and suspicious of outsiders, particularly ones who wandered around looking bewildered and undercooked, like you. A pair of soldiers stroll past, their bronze helmets gleaming, eyes sweeping the crowd like eagles on patrol. They glance at you but say nothing. One of them spits, not at you, just generally. You pretend to look confident. It's not working. In the distance, the sprawl of Bursa Hill towers over the lower city. That's where the elite live. The priests, the generals, the moneyed merchant dynasties who wear rings on every finger and debate philosophy over fig wine. You're not going up there anytime soon, not without a bribe, a bath, or both. Still, something draws your eyes to it. There's power up there. The kind that built this city from a windswept colony into a rival of Rome. A place where ships were built faster than empires rose. A place of wealth and gods and sacrifice. Or so the rumours say. The jury's still out on the true extent of Carthage's legendary wealth. Roman sources often exaggerated, painting it as dripping with gold and sin. But archaeological digs have turned up enough fine pottery, coins and massive harbour infrastructure to suggest they weren't completely lying. A donkey screams nearby, braying loud enough to shatter thought. You wince, you smell, and you have no idea where you're supposed to sleep tonight. But congratulations, you've made it to Carthage. You probably won't survive this. You follow the smell of cooked lentils, hoping it'll lead to shelter, but instead it delivers you straight into the chaos of Carthage's street-level life, and it is not ready to roll out any welcome mat. The city is a living labyrinth. Every alley narrows into another, some barely wide enough for your shoulders. You twist sideways to pass a plump merchant carrying a basket of sea sponges on his head, only for a herd of goats to stampede through moments later. One brushes your leg and you swear its fur is damp and suspiciously sticky. The goat doesn't apologise. A woman above dumps something brown and liquidy from a clay pot onto the cobblestones. It splashes near your foot. You choose not to look up, or down. People yell constantly, at vendors, at animals, at the sky, at you. It's not angry yelling, more like expressive punctuation. You pass a fishmonger violently negotiating with a customer, smacking a squid against the table for emphasis. Nearby, a boy balances a tray of boiled snails on his head while dodging a one-legged beggar chasing him with a broom. You think it's a game. You think you're wrong. The noise is a blanket, and not a cosy one. Bronze bells clang from shop fronts to announce arrivals. A pair of street performers bang drums made from stretched hide and chant praises to Baal Hammon with unsettling eye contact. Incense coils snake from altars and doorways, myrrh, frankincense, or maybe dried citrus peels in desperation. Fun fact, Carthaginian homes often had no windows on the lower floors, just thick plaster walls and small slits near the top to keep out thieves and heat. Great for security, terrible for fresh air, also explains the smell of boiled cabbage oozing from every fourth doorway. You duck under a stone archway, hoping for relief, only to walk straight into a camel. The camel blinks, you blink. It snorts. You back away respectfully. There are very few rules in these streets, but one is sacred. Stay out of the way or become part of the scenery. You press yourself against a wall as a palanquin trundles by, carried by 4 very sweaty, very unhappy men. Inside, a noblewoman lounges on purple cushions, fanning herself with a palm leaf and sipping what you suspect is fermented fig wine. She doesn't look at you, but her monkey does. It throws a date pit at your face. The city is alive in a way that makes your thoughts slow down just trying to keep up. You spot a priest of Melkart preaching to a circle of listeners, his beard oiled, arms outstretched like he's calling thunder. People stop. Some kneel. Others ignore him entirely and argue about grain prices just a few feet away. Carthage is not a quiet place. It's not a clean place either, but it is breathtaking in its relentless vibrancy. Mosaics glint under your feet where the richer neighbourhoods begin. Columns rise beside homes that double as storefronts. Kids with shaved heads and painted amulets dangle from rooftops, tossing pebbles at passing dogs. One scholar suggested that the sensory overload of Carthage may have been part of its power, a city built to overwhelm, impress and disorient anyone who didn't belong. You're starting to believe it. You pause beside a stall selling jars of dye. The merchant eyes your sunburned face and peasant tunic with pity or amusement. He lifts a jar of brilliant purple and gestures. Royalty colour. Expensive. You? Number you nod, defeated. He nods back, satisfied. Another man tries to sell you genuine Roman trinkets, which appear to be broken spoons and a dolphin-shaped soap dish. A child tugs your sleeve and offers to tell your fortune with shells. You decline. She shrugs and does it anyway. 3 shells, 1 cracked, 1 missing, and 1 shaped like a tooth. You die soon, she whispers. Delightful. A donkey knocks over a basket of lentils. A sailor picks one off the ground and eats it without breaking stride. You're officially in the thick of it now. The street opens suddenly, almost violently, into a broader plaza. Here, the chaos stretches upward. Buildings 3-4 stories tall, leaning ever so slightly toward each other like gossiping neighbours. Laundry flaps overhead, forming a canopy of stained linen and faded red wool. You get hit in the face with a wet tunic. It's cold. It's someone's undergarment. You keep walking. Scholars still debate whether these buildings were true apartment complexes or just stacked homes with shared courtyards. Either way, privacy is more of a concept than a reality here. And then comes the chamber pot. It's an old woman, 5th story, clay bowl, a practiced arm. You hear it before you feel it, a thick splat somewhere behind you and a cry of disgust from an unlucky bystander. You turn, you flinch, you whisper a thank you to whatever gods kept your head clean. You dart into a side alley and find temporary refuge behind a spice vendor's stall. The scent of cumin and cinnamon hits your nostrils like a comforting slap. You breathe deeply, but not too deeply. Someone's also selling pickled onions nearby. At last, you find a bit of calm. A tired musician plays a reed flute beside a cracked fountain. Children toss bones like dice, shouting in a rhythm you can't follow. A woman passes with a jug balanced on her head, humming a tune so soft it makes the chaos behind you feel briefly like music. But don't relax too much. A dog just took your left sandal. Eventually, after chasing your stolen sandal halfway down a fish-slick alley and losing sight of it forever behind a stack of amphorae, you reach what might generously be called lodging. Though calling it a room is optimistic. It's more of a hot, creaking crawl space with dreams of becoming a closet. A wiry man with 1 tooth and 2 tunics gestures for you to follow him up a narrow stairwell. Really more of a ladder nailed to the side of the building. You climb carefully, your fingers scraping the plaster, your head narrowly avoiding a low-hanging beam. You pass 2 sleeping cats, 3 potted herbs, and 1 extremely confused parrot. The attic door opens with a moan like it's begging you to turn back. Inside, the air is warm with the smell of boiled onions, burnt wool, and disappointment. Sunlight pokes through a single slit in the clay brick wall, casting beams across the floor where 6 people are already sleeping, or pretending to. This is your new home, a communal garret above a dye shop. You can tell it's a dye shop by the fumes. The air is thick with the nose-burning tang of fermented mollusks, the main ingredient in Tyrian purple dye. Which is to say, the place smells like rotting seafood left in a leather bag under the sun. Your eyes water, your skin tingles. One of your eyebrows may be chemically dissolving. Fun fact, the famous Carthaginian purple was made by crushing murex sea snails, then letting them rot, boil and ferment until they produced a pungent pigment that stained everything. Clothing, skin, nostrils and presumably dignity. Your sleeping spot is indicated with a grunt and a hand wave toward a scratchy mat wedged between a wall and a beam. There's a small oil lamp nearby, flickering weakly in the stale air. Someone coughs behind you. Someone else mutters a prayer. A third person rolls over and farts. You sit down and immediately regret it. The mat is stuffed with straw and something that crunches when you move. Hopefully not beetles. Possibly beetles. Outside the window slit, the city continues to howl and hum. Voices echo upward. Vendors calling out their wares. Kids shrieking with laughter or terror or both, and a rhythmic pounding from the dye barrels below that sounds suspiciously like someone using a mallet on a squid. You lie back and try not to think about the smell, or the heat, or the fact that the ceiling is just 1 strong breeze away from collapsing. Instead, you fixate on a spider slowly descending from the beam above your face. It dangles, it observes you, it climbs back up unimpressed. You pull your tunic tighter, realizing it's still damp from sweat and camel contact. Someone offers you a piece of bread, hard, dry, and possibly older than you. You nod gratefully, then nearly break a tooth biting into it. You pretend to chew. No one's fooled. Below you, through the floorboards, comes a muffled argument in rapid Punic. Someone is definitely yelling about someone else stealing dye or spoiling a batch. There's a splash, a scream, and then silence. You hope no one's dead, or if they are, that it won't leak upward. Experts still debate whether most Carthaginians lived in these kinds of cramped urban quarters, or whether only poorer residents did. What's clear is that space was precious and privacy even more so. You have neither. From your awkward perch, you can see across to another rooftop. There, a woman is hanging laundry in the windless air, pausing to wipe sweat from her brow and yell something at a man chasing chickens. The chickens appear to be winning. The longer you sit, the more you realise just how little silence exists here. Even at this height, the city breathes loudly. Bronze clangs. Dogs bark. A baby starts crying 3 rooms over and doesn't stop. The dye fumes tickle your throat. You try not to cough. It feels like it might offend the building. At least you're not alone in your misery. A boy nearby starts softly humming a tune, rhythmic and slow, a lullaby passed down from Phoenician sailors, or just something to keep the mice away. A woman near the corner adjusts her head wrap, glances your way, and says something you don't catch but nod to anyway. Politeness matters, even in attics. You shift your weight and hear a definite crunch beneath you. Beetles, confirmed. You consider leaving, trying to find a nicer place, a quieter one. Then you remember your options: street, stable, or the beach. And Carthaginian beaches aren't lined with towels and umbrellas. They're rocky, crab-ridden, and very popular with stray dogs and pickpockets. So, you stay, for now. The truth is, life in ancient Carthage wasn't about comfort. It was about function, trade, resilience. People weren't here to lounge. They were here to work, to worship, to survive. And you're just trying to keep your lungs from melting. The floor shifts slightly. Someone climbs the ladder into the room, carrying a basket of dried figs and a face full of soot. No one greets him. He nods once, flops down and starts eating straight from the basket with a slow, tired rhythm. You lock eyes for a second. He offers a fig. You shake your head. He shrugs. The figs probably smell like dye too. There is no bed, no door, no privacy. Just a mat, a corner, and the ever-present hum of a city that never quite settles. And in the midst of it all you, confused, tired, and slowly being dyed purple by osmosis. Welcome to your first Carthaginian night indoors. Sort of. Morning in Carthage arrives not with birdsong, but with a chorus of barrel thuds, goat bleats, and someone loudly vomiting into a gutter. You wake up stuck to your straw mat, every joint creaking like the attic beams overhead. Your mouth tastes like old figs and regret. You're not sure what time it is. There are no clocks, only the slanted light leaking through the wall slit, and the smell of warm goat milk drifting up from the dye shop kitchen below. Judging by the sudden flurry of movement in the garret, it's breakfast time. Or at least the Carthaginian version of breakfast. You shuffle downstairs, more a slide than a walk, trying not to breathe too deeply. The man who offered you the fig last night is now half asleep by the doorway, snoring and twitching like he's dreaming of being chased by poultry. The kitchen is a shelf with 2 pots, a sack of barley, and what might be a wooden spoon. A woman stands over the fire, stirring with one hand and swatting flies with the other. She hands you a chipped bowl without ceremony. It contains a small pile of wrinkled olives, a cup of tepid goat milk, and what could generously be described as a barley cake, though compressed mush might be more accurate. You sit cross-legged on a cracked tile floor and stare at your meal. The olives are salty and sour, like someone soaked them in seawater and vinegar overnight. The milk is warm, faintly hairy, and smells faintly of hay. And the cake? Well, you try biting it. It resists. You try again. It breaks, but only emotionally. Fun fact: ancient Carthaginians relied heavily on barley, not just for food, but also for beer. Their breakfast staples were basic, filling, and not designed to impress. Think fuel, not feast. As you choke down your last mouthful, a small child walks past, grabs your bowl, and licks the inside with the efficiency of someone who's done this before. She winks at you. You blink back. She's already gone. A man nearby offers you something from a sealed jar. You hesitate, then nod politely. He pops the lid and reveals a sticky clump of what looks like honey and crushed locust. You nibble. It's sweet, crunchy, and strangely, not bad. Until the aftertaste hits. Then it's very bad. Very insect. You step outside into the growing light, stomach uncertain, mouth confused, brain still trying to reboot. The streets are already bustling. People are on the move, carrying baskets, hauling fish, stacking amphorae and yelling over one another like it's a competitive sport. You blend in exactly 0%. Your first mistake is making eye contact with a man holding a broom. He hands it to you. You try to refuse, but he insists with such dramatic nodding that it feels like a cultural obligation. Suddenly you're sweeping dust from one storefront to another, achieving nothing except raising more dust. An old woman claps her hands and tosses you a date. You catch it. She smiles. It has a worm. You pretend to eat it anyway. She laughs, then pats your head like you're her confused nephew. Experts still debate whether Carthaginian daily life was truly this communal, or whether that's a modern romanticization. Some evidence suggests close-knit neighbourhoods, with food, labour and childcare often shared informally. Other accounts describe strict hierarchies and sharp social divisions. Either way, you're clearly being tested. After a half-hour of pretend sweeping, the man with the broom reappears and gives you a nod of approval, or maybe dismissal. It's hard to tell. He takes the broom back and points toward a small shop with a crooked sign painted in what might be Punic or might be wine stains. Inside, you find a low table, 3 stools, and a large man slicing what looks like pickled radish. He waves you in. This, apparently, is the neighbourhood's makeshift cafe, offering bitter herbal tea and what might be leftover soup. The tea is scalding, the colour of old bronze, and tastes like boiled bark. The soup is thick, grey, and contains a generous handful of mystery. You sip slowly. A man beside you begins talking. You nod. He keeps talking. You nod more. He asks you something. You freeze. Everyone turns. You panic and nod again. He bursts into laughter. The room joins him. You smile like you meant to be funny. Somehow you've passed another test. A woman offers you a piece of fruit, something between a plum and a fig. You accept gratefully, only to discover it's been dried into a chewy, leathery strip that takes 5 minutes to chew and 10 to forget. Still, it's something to do with your jaw. A boy enters the shop holding a small lizard tied to a string. No one bats an eye. He sits near the hearth, shares a piece of your soup bread with the lizard, and starts humming an off-key melody that somehow makes you feel weirdly homesick for a home that never had lizards on leashes. Carthage, you're realizing, isn't trying to impress you. It's trying to wear you down, and it's working. The man beside you, between mouthfuls of pickled greens, points to your sandals, or what's left of them, and mutters something. He takes a swig from a clay cup, then pats your shoulder. You think he just said, "You'll need better shoes." You also think he may be right. At that moment, a young woman storms into the shop, ranting in rapid-fire Punic, holding a soggy barley cake in one hand and a dead mouse in the other. She slams both on the counter. The room goes silent. Everyone leans in. The drama is real. Even the lizard looks concerned. After some yelling and pointing and a dramatic reenactment involving the soup pot, the woman leaves. The man beside you shrugs, wipes his beard and says something that probably translates to, "She comes in every week." You finish your tea. Your stomach is confused but full. Your throat is slightly numb. You've made it through a Carthaginian breakfast without dying, insulting anyone that you know of, or eating anything actively poisonous. You step back outside, blinking into the morning sun, and realise it's only been 2 hours since you woke up. You're starting to get your bearings now, or so you think. Fueled by half a barley cake, a questionable fig strip, and tea brewed from what was probably a shrub, you set off to experience one of Carthage's essential rituals, public bathing. You've heard of Roman baths, clean, orderly, full of white marble and strategic steam. Carthage, though? Carthage bathes with less polish and more personality. You follow a cluster of women and young boys carrying clay jugs and threadbare towels into a cracked stone building marked with a faded crescent above the door. Inside, the air is thick with humidity and densely populated with humans. The smell hits you first, smoky, sour, vaguely minty, and with undertones of mildew and feet. There's no entrance fee. Just a nod from a man with one eye and a very fluffy dog who seems to be in charge of security. You nod back. The dog sneezes in approval. The interior is dim, lit by small fire pits tucked into corners. A thick layer of condensation drips from every surface. The walls are tiled, but barely. The mosaics are chipped. The grout is crumbling, and a small frog watches you from the mouth of a drain. Your first challenge is undressing. There's no private stall, just hooks, pegs, and a group of strangers staring like you just dropped a whole chicken. You try to play it cool. You fold your tunic neatly, then immediately regret it when someone else's wet towel flops onto it. Next, you navigate your way into the washing area, a shallow, stone-floored room with a central basin that may or may not be original water. People squat beside it, splashing themselves with ladles. You mimic them. Your first splash is too enthusiastic. You accidentally douse a nearby elder in the face. He stares. You panic. He grins and throws a ladleful right back. Congratulations. You're part of the ritual now. Fun fact, ancient Carthaginian bathing practices combined Punic, Phoenician, and African influences. While not as architecturally grand as Roman thermae, these spaces were social hubs. places for gossip, rituals, and surprisingly business deals. Also, no soap, just sand, ash, and good old-fashioned scrubbing. You're handed what looks like a rough rag dipped in olive oil. The man who offers it grunts and gestures for you to scrub your arms. You obey. It exfoliates. Aggressively. Suddenly, someone starts singing. A deep, rhythmic chant in a dialect that's half musical, half incantation. A few others join in. It's oddly calming, until one man misses a beat and starts coughing. A second voice mocks him in perfect harmony. Everyone laughs. It's like an ancient Carthaginian open mic night, complete with heckling. A woman dips her toddler into the basin with expert speed. Splash, rinse, done. The kid screams, she shrugs. You wonder if he'll be back next week. Probably. You move to the warm room, a small chamber filled with rocks heated over coals. You sit awkwardly beside a man who's absolutely too comfortable being naked. He slaps his thigh and says something cheerfully. You nod. He slaps your thigh. It echoes. You say nothing. The heat starts to work its way into your bones. For a few blissful minutes you forget about the dye fumes, the goat milk, the lice risk, and the probable tetanus in your right foot. You breathe in. The air tastes like eucalyptus and ambition. Then someone brings out the gossip. Two women beside the steam vent start whispering. Loudly. They're talking about someone named Maruba. Apparently she said something about the priest's son and a fishmonger's daughter. You don't know who any of these people are, but the tone says everything. Scandal. The woman across from them gasps. Someone mutters, "Tanit, protect us." You nod like you're shocked too. Experts still debate how politically influential these bathhouses were. Some believe they were casual meeting spots. Others argue they were hotbeds of civic chatter and subtle manipulation, where marriages were arranged, trades were negotiated, and reputations quietly destroyed. You're inclined to believe the latter, given how many side-eyes are flying around this room. After what feels like hours, but is probably 30 minutes, someone claps twice and yells something that sounds like, "Last rinse." Everyone groans, rises, and queues up to dump a final jug of cold water over their heads. You brace, you pour, you gasp. The water is mountain-fed, teeth-chattering, soul-slap cold. Someone behind you snorts with laughter. You can't even be mad. It's objectively hilarious watching your face implode from the shock. You stumble back toward your hook, now thoroughly rinsed and bewildered. Your tunic is still damp from the towel incident. You wring it out. It smells marginally better than before, which is really all you can hope for. Before you leave, the man with the fluffy dog pats your shoulder and mumbles something. You think he says you did okay. The dog wags its tail like you passed a test. You smile, even if your lips are still frozen. Outside, the sun hits your freshly scrubbed skin and instantly makes you sweaty again. But now the sweat feels earned, like you've been welcomed into the steam-soaked heart of Carthage. You're clean, sort of, or at least no longer visibly offensive, and best of all, you didn't get ringworm. Probably. You're barely dry when you're drafted. It starts innocently enough. You're walking down a narrow lane, still toweling off your damp hair when a group of men in linen tunics and annoyed expressions stops you. One of them points at you, then at a stack of rough-cut limestone blocks piled against a wall. He raises an eyebrow. You raise your hands in innocent confusion. Wrong move! Two of them grab your elbows with practiced efficiency. They don't shout. They don't explain. They just start walking, and you start walking too, because apparently that's what people do here. One of them mutters something about civic obligation. The other just sighs like he's already regretting your involvement. Welcome to your first lesson in Carthaginian public service. Spoiler, there's no opt-out option. You're marched to the edge of a construction site just inside the city's wall, near a temple complex draped in sun-bleached banners and decorated with symbols you can't read. There's a team of labourers hauling timber, stacking stone and swearing in rhythm. You're handed a pickaxe and shown a shallow pit. No instructions, just a nod. You look down at the pit, then up at the pickaxe, then back down at the pit. It's clear, dig or disappoint. So you dig. It's hot. So hot. The midday sun has reached that special angle where it seems to aim directly at your neck. The pickaxe is heavier than you expect, and the ground is less dirt than compacted clay, with the occasional ancient nail embedded like a surprise insult. A boy nearby gestures to you, miming a better stance. You adjust. The tool feels more natural in your hands now. like a shovel you once used in modern life to plant succulents. Only now is not about decorating your balcony. It's about not being yelled at in Punic by a foreman who looks like he eats rocks for breakfast. Fun fact, Carthaginian society was rigidly structured but deeply reliant on civic labour. While enslaved people did much of the heavy work, free citizens were often expected to contribute to public projects, especially in wartime. And Carthage was always just before, in the middle of, or recovering from a war. Today, your civic duty apparently involves clearing out old rubble from a foundation site. You're surrounded by workers of all kinds, young boys sweating through coarse tunics, older men with sun-leathered arms, and one woman who's clearly stronger than everyone else combined. She lifts stone like it's dried bread. A man beside you strikes up a conversation. You don't understand a word, but you nod and smile. He mimes a wall with his hands, then points upward, then pounds his chest proudly. You figure he's saying, "We built that." You nod again. He grins. Then he hands you a basket of rocks and points toward the dump pile. You stagger across the courtyard, trying to maintain some dignity. The rocks shift. One falls. You stub your toe. Again. Your foot is going to look like a history textbook by tomorrow. Suddenly a priest appears. He's wearing a robe dyed so deeply purple it almost glows. He's flanked by 2 boys holding incense and a third carrying a goat. Everyone stops. Even the birds seem to hush. The priest raises his hand and chants something in a solemn tone. The goat bleats once, clearly unimpressed. The workers bow their heads. You follow suit, trying to match their posture, until you bow too low and your face ends up in a basket of sand. You emerge coughing, your nose full of sacred dust. The priest finishes his ritual, pats the goat and walks off. The goat is less lucky. Scholars remain divided on whether ritual sacrifice was still widely practiced in Carthage by the 3rd century BCE, or if much of it had become symbolic. Roman sources love to exaggerate tales of horror, but inscriptions and remains suggest at least some form of offering still occurred, especially when new construction was involved. You return to digging, this time under stricter supervision. The foreman has taken a personal interest in your technique, which he expresses by yelling and clapping his hands very close to your face. It's oddly motivating. Eventually, you're granted a break. You collapse under a fig tree beside a few other labourers, all panting, all streaked with dirt and sweat. One passes you a small cup of barley beer, lukewarm, slightly sour, but the best thing you've tasted all day. You down it. You want another. You don't get another. The woman who lifts stones like bread tears a piece from a flat loaf and hands it to you. You thank her with a nod and a dramatic She chuckles and offers you a second piece. Progress. You're starting to feel a strange sense of belonging, or at least tolerated existence. You eat, you sweat, you ache, just like them. Then someone yells fire and everyone sprints. You don't ask questions, you just run. A cart of dye rags has gone up in flames by the tannery, and the breeze is carrying the smoke right toward the worksite. Buckets appear from nowhere. A human chain forms. You're handed one and promptly doused by the person behind you. You cough, sputter, and pass it forward. The fire is out in minutes. The smell, however, will linger forever. You return to your post, dripping, coughing, and just a little more accepted. The foreman pats your back, hard enough to cause internal rearrangement, and mutters something that sounds vaguely complimentary. You take it as a win. As the sun dips lower, casting long orange shadows across the site, the day's labour wraps up. Tools are stacked. Baskets are emptied. Shoulders are rubbed. You're handed a reed token with a stamp pressed into it. Possibly payment. Possibly just permission to leave. You're sore in places you didn't know had muscles. Your back protests with every step. But somehow, you feel grounded, as if the very stones of Carthage have acknowledged your effort. You limp back toward the city centre, dustier, sweatier, and significantly more purple-stained than this morning. But you made it through a full Carthaginian workday without collapsing or accidentally joining a goat cult. And that's something. You shuffle back into the city like a sun-dried raisin in sandals. Every part of you hurts, especially the parts you didn't know could ache, like your earlobes and your will to live. But as dusk folds its warm orange blanket over Carthage, you realise something else. You're starving. The air is changing now. The sharp, busy smells of the daytime, fish, sweat, burning incense, mellow into something heartier. wood smoke, stew, maybe even a touch of mint. Your stomach growls so loudly a passing dog yelps in alarm. You follow your nose through a neighbourhood that looks slightly cleaner, slightly wealthier, and definitely smells better. Painted doorways, window drapes that haven't been bleached by the sun, children playing with carved figurines instead of rocks. You're in the merchant quarter now. Eventually you're waved in by a man wearing a robe that screams moderate success. His house has a front room set with a low table, a pair of stools and 3 bowls already steaming. He smiles, gestures for you to sit, and begins a lively conversation with someone off in the kitchen. Possibly a wife, possibly a particularly communicative pot. You sit on the stool which creaks under your dust-caked weight. In front of you, a shallow bowl of chickpeas, a second of thick fish stew, and a third containing what appears to be pickled vegetables and something that might once have been a fig. You don't ask questions, you eat. The chickpeas are warm, garlicky, and soft enough to crush with your tongue. The stew, salty, savoury, with hints of fennel and fish bones. You'd cry if your mouth weren't so full. You glance at your host, who raises a cup of wine in your direction. You mimic the gesture with your bowl of pickled stuff. Fun fact, Carthaginians had a cuisine heavily influenced by Phoenician, Berber, and Mediterranean traditions. Chickpeas, lentils, fish, and fermented sauces were staples, often cooked in large clay pots and shared communally. And yes, fish sauce was practically its own food group. The man continues talking. You understand none of it, but his voice is pleasant, like a podcast you didn't mean to start but keep listening to anyway. He gestures at a carved ivory amulet hanging over the doorway and tells you something. Maybe a story, maybe its price. You nod respectfully. Suddenly another guest enters. She's dressed in layers of saffron and white, her braids held by tiny bronze clips. She gives you a look that says, "Oh, you're new." You offer a half smile, which she answers with a blink and a muttered something that might have been, "Bless your heart," or the Punic equivalent. Then begins the debate. Apparently dinner here comes with a side of politics. The woman and the host begin discussing Rome, and whether those arrogant Mediterranean meatheads are about to become a problem. You catch the words Sicily, alliance, and they think they own everything. The tone is measured but firm, like 2 people trying to sound calm while yelling in their eyes. Scholars remain divided on how the average Carthaginian felt about Rome during the early Punic tensions. Some argue merchants were wary but pragmatic. Rome meant trade. Others believe resentment ran deep, especially among those who remembered previous Roman betrayals or watched their ships crowding the wrong ports. The guest takes a long sip of wine and declares something that makes the host burst out laughing and clap the table. You assume it's a joke. You laugh too. She does not laugh. You stop. Everyone stares. A silence falls. Then she smirks. Crisis averted. As the conversation drifts towards safer ground, grain prices, temple repairs, someone's cousin who swore an oath to bail and immediately lost his donkey, you relax. You're offered more stew. You accept. You don't ask what's in it. You no longer care. Hunger trumps mystery. One of the host's sons appears with a stringed instrument and plucks a few hesitant notes. The woman joins in with a soft melody, and soon the whole room hums with something ancient, gentle, and slightly off-key. It's lovely. The notes seem to swirl in the lamplight like moths. A neighbour stops by with a jug of something fermented. You're handed a cup. It smells like vinegar, honey, and bold decisions. You sip. It goes down like liquid fire. You smile politely. Your throat disagrees. There's laughter, then a sudden pause when a servant enters and whispers something in the host's ear. He nods solemnly. Conversation slows. You're not sure what changed, but the mood shifts. Plates are cleared. The lamp is dimmed. The woman gathers her shawl and leaves with a quiet goodbye. You help gather the bowls, but the host waves you off and gestures for you to sit. He returns with a small plate, flatbread with something sweet on it, date syrup maybe, or crushed figs and honey. Either way, it's the perfect end to a rough day. Sticky, soft, and gently fragrant. Like dessert and a lullaby. He offers you a blanket from a woven basket. You blink. You point to the door, prepared to return to your purple-scented attic of doom. He shakes his head, points to a corner mat, smiles. You bow in gratitude, flop down on the mat, and for the first time today, exhale fully. You survived dinner. You survived politics. And somehow, you've been invited to sleep in a house where the floor isn't made of beetles. You close your eyes to the sound of soft strings, the scent of warm chickpeas still clinging to your clothes, and the faint hope that tomorrow's civic duty doesn't involve fire. You wake before dawn to the sound of gentle clinking, ceramic against ceramic, soft voices murmuring like river water. The mat beneath you is firm but mercifully beetle-free. A breeze slips through a high window, carrying the faint scent of sea salt and wood smoke. For a brief, wonderful second, you forget where you are. Then your spine cracks like a brittle scroll and you remember Carthage, 3rd century BCE, and your day is about to begin with stairs, lots of them. Your host is already up, dressed in fresh linen, tightening a belt pouch and talking to his son, who is drawing tiny boats in a dish of flour. You're handed a crust of bread, more symbolic than satisfying, and gestured toward the doorway. Apparently, today, you're going up, literally. Bursa Hill towers above Carthage, the high citadel where temples, archives, and the homes of the elite perch like stone birds over the rest of the city. Getting there means ascending narrow, winding roads lined with shops, courtyards, and suspiciously aggressive donkeys. Your calves scream immediately. You ignore them. The climb is hot, steep, and oddly social. People pass you carrying bundles of reeds, crates of figs, and one man with a full chicken under each arm. A woman walks beside you for a while, humming to herself and balancing a clay jug on her head. She doesn't break a sweat. You, on the other hand, are melting. Halfway up, a boy stops you and offers a handful of what look like dried berries. You try one. It's sour, chewy, and wakes up every nerve ending in your jaw. He grins and skips away. Your tongue remains puckered for the next block. You reach the top just as the sun spills golden light over the rooftops. The view is stunning. Carthage unfurls below you like a scroll of stone and colour. Red clay tiles, whitewashed walls, smoke rising in soft spirals from 1,000 cook fires. Beyond it all, the harbour glitters. Even you have to admit, for all its smells and shouting, this city knows how to put on a morning. Fun fact, Byrsa Hill was the heart of Carthage, believed to house administrative buildings, key temples, and possibly libraries, though no definitive structure has been confirmed. Some sources claim records were kept here before the Roman destruction. Others argue they were stored in underground vaults now lost to time and sand. You're not here for politics, though, not today. You're here to fetch water. Apparently your host's cousin runs an astrology stall. Yes, a stall for reading the stars by day, and he sent you along with a clay jug to help out, which really means carry things and don't touch anything expensive. The cousin is a man in his 30s, barefoot, robed in star-embroidered cloth and draped in the confidence of someone who once predicted rain correctly and never let it go. He greets you with a nod and immediately hands you a list of tasks written in Punic. You hold it. He blinks. You shrug. He sighs. First job, fill the water jug. You walk to the nearest cistern, located beside a columned courtyard where 2 women argue over whether a neighbour's dream about a flaming fig tree means her husband is cursed. You draw water carefully, trying not to drop the jug or offend any local spirits. A nearby rooster crows just as you lift it. You choose to interpret that as a good omen. Second job, arrange the stones. This turns out to mean setting up smooth, palm-sized rocks in a semicircle around the astrologer's stool. They're painted with symbols, stars, waves, birds, and one that looks suspiciously like a cow sneezing. He explains, through an elaborate mime, that they form a cosmic pattern, one that helps him interpret celestial moods and client fortunes. You nod, pretending you understand anything about cosmic cows. Business starts slowly. The first client is a merchant's daughter asking whether she'll marry a sailor or a scribe. The astrologer throws bones, rearranges his stones, hums and declares, "Both," but not in that order. She leaves confused and slightly impressed. The second client is more interesting. He's a soldier, short, square-jawed and clearly sceptical. He wants to know if Rome is coming. The astrologer frowns, rearranges a birdstone and sighs heavily. Then he mutters something that sounds like, "Eventually." The soldier grunts, tosses him a coin, and walks away. Scholars still debate whether Carthaginians placed actual faith in astrology or used it more as social theatre. The line between priest, prophet, and political advisor was often thin. Some astrologers were respected, others were mocked, Many probably did both before breakfast. As the day progresses, more people arrive. Some bring fruit as offerings, others bring gossip. A man asks if his donkey is cursed. A child wants to know if her missing doll is in the well or the bakery. The astrologer handles each with the solemnity of a man unveiling the fate of empires. You, meanwhile, ferry water, rearrange stones, and once chase a monkey that stole the star chart. It's a strange morning, but strangely peaceful. After several readings, your host's cousin gestures for a break. You sit under a fig tree beside the stall, sipping watered wine and munching on something vaguely nutty. You're not entirely sure what it is. It crunches. You choose to be okay with that. As you sit, you glance at the horizon, at the ocean stretching west, glittering like glass. Somewhere beyond it lies Rome, powerful, hungry, watching. You look back at the man reading goat bones and whispering to pebbles, and for just a moment you wonder if maybe, just maybe, he really can read the stars. Then he sneezes into a handful of ash and mutters a curse about seagulls. Mystery revoked. Still, for a few golden hours, you're part of something larger. A city that believes in stone, sweat, sea and sky. A place where prophecy costs 2 coins and maybe a pair. A culture too stubborn to fear the future, but not too proud to ask it a few questions anyway. You take another sip. The sun shifts, the monkey reappears, steals your fig, and vanishes into the tree. The stars remain unmoved. The stars may be calm, but the temples are not. After a quick lunch of leftover chickpeas wrapped in fig leaves and exactly 1 moment of calm, your astrologer friend claps you on the back and says something that probably means, "You're coming with me." You follow him past a row of sun-dried carts and up a winding stair cut into the rock of Bursa Hill's shoulder. It's quieter up here, though not by much. The noise of the harbour fades into background hum, replaced by the layered murmur of prayer, chanting, bells and goats, always goats. Ahead, 3 towers pierce the sky, each topped with a carved crescent, each streaked with soot and seagull stains. One of them leans slightly, like it's considering leaving the city entirely. This is the Sanctuary District, where the gods live, whether you believe in them or not. You pass a high stone wall decorated with painted tiles. The designs are haunting, geometric shapes and human forms half fused with animal parts. A lion-headed man, a woman with wings, a face with no mouth. The images are worn but unmistakably powerful. They seem to hum beneath the surface, like voices pressed into the stone. Your destination, a temple of Tanit, the great goddess of Carthage, protector of the city, guardian of life and debatably death. The front of the temple is a massive archway carved with palm fronds and stars. Inside it's dim, cool, and smells like melted myrrh and burnt orange peels. Columns rise like tree trunks, their surfaces covered in votive carvings, hands, suns, crescent moons. At the entrance, a priest in long indigo robes marks your forehead with something sticky and fragrant. He mutters a phrase in Punic. You nod solemnly. It's a ritual, or a greeting, or a really fancy parking validation. Fun fact, Tanit was the most important deity in Carthage. Often paired with Baal Hammon, she was invoked in fertility rites, civic ceremonies, and protection rituals. Her symbols, palm trees, stars, and outstretched hands, appear all over Carthaginian art and architecture. The sanctuary is busier than you expected. A group of women chant softly near a brazier. One swings a censer that leaks golden smoke in slow spirals. Children carry baskets of grain, dates, and painted pebbles to a low altar. The mood is reverent, but not sombre, almost celebratory. Your astrologer companion kneels beside a low basin filled with oil and sprigs of rosemary. He drops a small ivory charm into the liquid, whispers something, then turns to you and taps the stone floor. You kneel, awkwardly. Another priest enters, taller, older, eyes like embers. He addresses the room in a firm, echoing voice. You don't catch most of it, but you hear the word Carthadasht, the original name of Carthage, then Melkart, then Mulk. A few heads bow lower, and then comes the moment. 2 young attendants emerge carrying a small figure swaddled in cloth. At first, your heart skips. A baby? Is this what you think it is? Number? It's a carved figurine, wooden, stylized, painted with red and gold swirls. They place it on the altar gently, almost lovingly. The elder priest sprinkles it with wine, then crushes a handful of herbs over its head. The chanting deepens, the censer swings wider, and you realize this is a symbolic offering, a ritual reenactment. Experts still debate whether Carthaginians practiced literal child sacrifice. Roman writers accuse them of horrific rites, claiming they burned infants to appease Baal. But modern scholars argue much of that was propaganda, citing lack of definitive archaeological proof and evidence of substitute offerings, dolls, statues, or animal remains. The figurine is raised high, then lowered into the flame. The fire crackles, consumes it, and the room exhales as one. The priest raises his hands, the room goes silent. You feel the weight of something ancient, belief so deeply rooted it seeps into the stone, into the skin. Then a boy sneezes, loudly, and someone giggles. The spell breaks, the ceremony winds down. Offerings are placed on the steps. Figs, coins, tiny loaves of bread shaped like birds. A few people stay to pray. You're ushered out gently, blinking in the sudden daylight. Outside, your astrologer friend pulls a small clay token from his pouch and presses it into your palm. It bears the symbol of Tanit, a triangle topped with a crescent. He taps your chest, then the sky, then nods. Protection. Or maybe, don't come back without better sandals. You descend the steps slowly, caught in a haze of incense and ancient mystery. As you walk, you notice more small shrines tucked into corners, little altars built into walls, rooftops, even alleyways. Carthage doesn't separate the sacred from the mundane. It layers them, wraps them together like fig and goat cheese. A baker leaves an offering of flour beside her oven. A fisherman hangs a shell from his boat's bow. Children play beside a statue of Baal Hammon, giggling as they climb the deity's stone lap. You pause at a fountain near the foot of Bursa Hill. Its water gurgles softly. Someone's left a necklace coiled in the basin, gleaming like a snake in the sunlight. You wash your hands, still sticky with incense. The token of Tanit is warm in your palm. Whether you believe or not, it feels comforting. Carthage, for all its noise and stone and sweat, is a city of gods. Not distant, aloof ones, but gods that walk the streets, watch from doorways, and sometimes sit beside you at dinner. You dry your hands on your tunic, glance once more at the citadel above, and whisper a thank you to no one in particular, just in case. You descend from Bursa Hill, with the late afternoon sun resting heavily on your shoulders, and the token of Tanit still tucked firmly into your palm. The air down here is thicker, louder, and somehow greasier, like everything that floats in the city eventually sinks back to the port. And that's exactly where you're headed now. Carthage's harbour isn't just a dock, it's the lifeblood of the city, a double harbour carved with alarming precision. From above, it looks like a fishhook and eye, one outer circle for trade, one inner for the navy, with warships hidden like knives in a drawer. You stumble into the port district and are immediately assaulted by the smells of tar, salt, fish, sweat, vinegar, citrus, and something you choose not to identify. Shouting fills the air, layered like music. Sailors barking orders, merchants arguing over prices, oxen bellowing as they haul carts of amphorae across cobblestones slick with oil and seawater. And then there's the singing, a group of dock workers harmonizing badly, but enthusiastically, about someone named Big-Footed Tula and a storm that stole their laundry. One verse seems to imply the storm was a person. You're swept along by a crowd carrying everything from linen bolts to crates of pomegranates. You sidestep a sailor puking into a rain gutter, only to run headfirst into a barrel full of pickled anchovies. It tips, you freeze, it wobbles. Someone grabs it just in time. A one-eyed man with a tattoo of a dolphin on his cheek grins at you, says something that might have been careful, and then launches into a story you didn't ask for but are too scared to interrupt. Fun fact, Carthage was famous for its navy, not just its size but its efficiency. The inner harbour could house over 200 ships, each with its own dock and storage room. Roman spies once pretended to be merchants just to sneak a peek. The tattooed sailor tells you about a sea beast off the coast of Sardinia that eats goats, fishermen, and possibly ships. Another sailor joins in, claiming to have seen it once, though he may be confusing it with a log. A third sailor says no. The real danger is Roman pirates who dress like Phoenicians to sneak up on Carthaginian vessels. That one earns nods of approval. You try to wander away politely, but are handed a small fish wrapped in waxed cloth. For luck, someone says. You don't question it. You tuck it into your belt pouch, your other pouch, not the one with the Tanit token. You're not mixing spiritual insurance with seafood charms. You find a quieter corner near a shipwright's shed and watch as workers hammer together the hull of a war galley. The ship is lean, sharp-nosed, designed to glide and ram. A boy dips a brush into molten pitch and slathers it along the seams, while humming a song that sounds suspiciously like the big-footed Tula ballad from earlier. Your eyes drift to the water. The harbour is full. Round-bellied trade ships from Tyre, narrow Egyptian skiffs, and sleek Numidian fishing boats. Some bear painted eyes on the prow to ward off curses. Others have charms tied to their masts, bones, feathers, even carved figs. You notice a small group loading amphorae onto a ship marked with a Roman inscription. The crew is Carthaginian, but the cargo, olive oil and bronze tools, is bound for Rome. There's tension. You feel it. A quiet, practiced neutrality, like a smile worn too long. Scholars remain divided on how friendly Carthaginian-Roman trade truly was before the Punic Wars. Some argue that both sides tolerated one another out of necessity. Others believe trade masked deep resentment. Either way, you're watching a relationship slowly fray around the edges. Nearby, a child tries to sell you a carved seashell with a face drawn on it. You decline. He shrugs and sells it to a sailor who pays with a piece of dried squid. The child looks thrilled. You sit on a crate, eating a pomegranate someone left behind, probably fine, and watch the sunset turn the harbour into a field of molten gold. The voices around you soften slightly, touched by the hour. It's still loud, but less urgent. The tide is changing. A man with a scroll approaches a nearby stall and begins reciting what sounds like a poem, or possibly a lawsuit. The merchant interrupts him with a plum to the face. Everyone laughs, including the poet. As darkness thickens, braziers are lit along the docks. Fires in metal bowls flicker orange against the hulls of boats. Shadows stretch. A horn blows once, then twice. Somewhere in the navy yard a bell tolls, a low, heavy sound like a warning or a bedtime ritual. You begin to walk back toward the city, but the way is slower now. The air is cooler, people linger. A woman leans from a balcony and tosses a rose petal into your hair. You look up. She's already vanished. Or maybe she was never there. A final gust of sea wind swirls around you as you cross the bridge back into the city proper. The port fades behind you, but it stays in your clothes, in your skin, in the waxed fish now smushed in your pouch. It's part of you. You've made it through the docks of Carthage without getting pickpocketed, press-ganged, or fed to a sea monster, which here is a pretty decent accomplishment, and as you climb the hill back toward your lodging, you realise something odd. You kind of want to go back tomorrow. You return to your lodging with your hair crusted in sea salt, your tunic soaked in a cocktail of harbour scents, and a quiet dread building in your gut. You've forgotten something. Laundry. Not just your clothes, mind you. All the borrowed, stained, and suspiciously fragrant layers you've been rotating through in hopes of blending in. They now lie in a heap at the side of your mat, smelling like someone tried to smother a goat with fish sauce and then gave up halfway. So before dawn creeps in again, you're dragged, gently but insistently, by your host's eldest daughter to the local wash site. It's not romantic. There are no sun-dappled streams or rustic stone basins. There's a concrete trough carved into the side of a communal courtyard filled with cloudy, slightly oily water and a generous helping of floating plant matter. Several women are already there, sleeves rolled, voices sharp, hands scrubbing like they're erasing the existence of dirt from the universe. You approach cautiously. One woman, broad-shouldered and wielding a scrubbing stone like it owes her money, eyes you up and down, then points to an open spot. You nod. She grunts. It's the closest thing to a welcome you've received all day. Your garments hit the water and instantly puff out like drowning jellyfish. You start scrubbing. Badly. The cloth resists your efforts, clinging to its odours like a toddler refusing a bath. A girl beside you giggles. You pretend you meant to do that. Fun fact. Carthaginian laundering often involved a mix of ash, clay, and fermented urine. Yes, urine. It breaks down oils, kills lice, and doubles as a whitening agent. The smell? Spectacular. You now understand why no one hugs in this city. You're handed a paddle. You stare at it. A woman mimes beating the garment. You try. The slap echoes off the courtyard walls. A cat runs away in terror. Someone claps. The women ease into their routines. Washing, gossiping, humming the same melody you heard near the bathhouse. They talk about neighbours, lovers, debts, dreams. One woman claims she saw her dead grandmother's face in a fig. Another insists her husband is possessed because he forgot their anniversary again. The crowd murmurs in agreement. A bundle of tunics is dropped into your lap by someone you don't recognise. You scrub, you rinse, you paddle. Your fingers are already pruned. The water darkens. You try not to think about it. Suddenly a splash hits your ear. A child has decided the trough is a swimming pool. Everyone laughs until his mother yells, and he's yanked out like a very wet radish. He wails. A fig is handed to him. All is forgiven. Scholars remain divided on whether these laundry courtyards were exclusively for women or open to all. What's clear is that they served not only as sanitation hubs but also social spaces. Stories were shared here, relationships strengthened, and sometimes marriages arranged, though probably not while the smell of ammonia was strongest. You glance around and notice the walls of the courtyard are carved with dozens of tiny handprints, each set in dried plaster. Some are labelled with names. Others are just symbols. You run your fingers across one, wondering if it's a blessing, a family marker, or simply someone killing time between rinse cycles. As the sun climbs, the air thickens. Soapsuds and steam rise in tandem. Someone tosses crushed rosemary into the water. The scent lifts briefly, then is devoured by stronger things, like beet juice stains and goat wool fibres. A woman beside you offers a small snack, fried dough stuffed with sesame and herbs. You bite. It's dense, oddly sweet, and exactly what your brain needed. You thank her. She nods, then steals your paddle to swat a fly the size of your thumb. It dies a heroic death. You finish the last tunic. It's better. Not fresh exactly, but passably clean, like a reused napkin folded nicely. You hang it over a long wooden rod already heavy with sun-bleached cloth. The laundry flaps like battle flags in the dry breeze. A man passes by with a cart full of eels. No one acknowledges him. The eels wave lazily like bored diplomats. One slaps the ground. A goat eats a sandal. You accept this as normal. You return to your mat carrying your pile of damp clothes, arms sore, fingertips wrinkled, and eyes slightly stung from splashing lye. You smell interesting, but also kind of triumphant. And then you realise you've been here long enough that you now have laundry responsibilities. You're not just a guest anymore. You're part of the rhythm, part of the daily tasks that keep Carthage running. Not the glamorous kind, but the foundational sort. The kind that builds cities from the bottom up, one soapy tunic at a time. Back in the attic, your garments steam gently in the corner. The other tenants don't say anything, but someone pushes a folded blanket your way. A peace offering, or congratulations, or just acknowledgement that you didn't dump your laundry in the harbour. You lie back, your back groans, your fingers twitch, but your skin no longer smells like regret and goat. Progress. You wake with your elbow in a laundry bundle and a vague memory of being cheered on by washerwomen. Your body feels slightly more manageable today, only 4 limbs aching instead of 11. You rise, stretch, and step out into the sunlight, your tunic crisp from drying overnight. You smell faintly of herbs and ash. You decide it's your best scent yet. Today, you have one goal. Go to the market and buy something simple, like dates. You think this will be easy. You are wrong. The Carthaginian marketplace, also called the Agora by the Greeks, is a glorious hurricane of humanity. It stretches across a wide plaza, tiered with stalls that spill over with goods, spices, textiles, meats, birds, roots, beads, oils, even oddities like petrified lizards and figurines shaped like fish-wearing hats. The noise could rattle bones. Horns blare as carts roll in. Chickens squawk from wicker cages. Someone yells about discount eel. You are nudged, elbowed, beckoned, and nearly pickpocketed within 30 seconds. You clutch your coin pouch like it's your last scrap of sanity. You spot a modest stall under a striped canopy, manned by a woman in a bright green scarf and a sun-battered frown. On her table, dates. Finally. Normal, achievable. You point. She nods. You hold up your coin. She shakes her head. You hold up 2. Still no. You're now deep in a negotiation and you don't know the rules. Fun fact, in Carthage, bartering was an art form. Prices weren't fixed, and the dance of trade could involve gestures, favours, gossip, or even promises of future returns. Coins existed, but were used alongside weights, seals, and lots of raised eyebrows. You try to smile, point, and mime eating. She laughs. She calls over her neighbour. He joins the fun. Now 3 people are debating your worth as a customer. You hand over a small bronze coin with a horse stamped on it. This finally gets a nod. The woman drops 4 shriveled dates into your palm. You think it's a victory until you bite one and discover it is in fact a fossil. You chew anyway. You have pride. You turn to leave, but a sudden shout freezes the air. A man is screaming in Punic. His coin purse is missing. Accusations fly. The stallholders close in. Someone calls for a guard. And then you feel it. Your belt pouch is lighter. Too light. You glance down. Gone. Someone stole your pouch, and all you have left are 3 rock-hard dates and a sense of betrayal. Panic spikes, but you force yourself to stay calm. You look around. Movement near the alley. A blur of brown cloth and fast feet. You run. You chase the figure through a labyrinth of stone and shadow, past a weaver's shop, a donkey chewing a tunic, and 2 boys rolling dice beside a fishmonger's stall. The alley narrows. The thief slips left. You slip too, on a fig. Of course. You land on your back, winded, arms outstretched. People walk past. One steps over you. Another tosses you a grape. Thanks. A shadow falls over you. A young woman leans down, tilts her head, and says something you can't translate, but the tone is unmistakable. You look like someone who's having a very bad day. She helps you up. You try to explain. You mime a pouch being stolen. She frowns, then gestures for you to follow. You do, limping slightly, still holding your 3 worthless dates. She leads you through a zigzag of covered walkways until you reach a quieter part of the market. A series of shaded alcoves filled with herbs, charms, carved amulets, and fish bones strung like jewellery. The woman ducks behind a tapestry and emerges moments later with a small wooden box. She opens it. Inside, your pouch. Your eyes widen. She smirks. Apparently she's part of an unofficial lost and found network. Young runners who retrieve stolen items, either by knowing the thieves or being quicker than them. She claims your thief wasn't local. Probably a foreigner from the docks. You nod solemnly, pretending to understand. She hands you the pouch. It's a little lighter. A small tax for the rescue, you assume. You offer one of your remaining dates. She bites it, grimaces, and throws it at a passing goat. You both laugh. The goat is unfazed. Experts still debate how structured Carthaginian market security was. Some records suggest an informal system of guild enforcers and merchant-sponsored watchers. Others believe theft was simply part of the chaos, handled by community shame or retaliation rather than formal justice. You thank the woman as best you can. She waves you off, disappears behind another curtain, and is gone. Like smoke, or a better version of you. You return to the market square with your pouch, mostly intact, and a deeper respect for street-smart locals. The sun has risen higher. The plaza glows with heat and haggling. You consider trying again. You spot another date vendor. You turn around and walk away. You find a quieter stall selling roasted chickpeas in a cone of palm leaf. You buy some. They're warm, crunchy, salted. No negotiation. Just a nod and a handful of coins. You sit on a low stone wall near the edge of the market, watching the crowds churn. A merchant slaps a customer with a fish. A child rides a goat like a warhorse. A priest yells at a juggler for blocking his shrine. Just another market day. And you? You survived it. You still have your pouch, your pride, and enough chickpeas to make it back to your attic with a snack. Just don't eat the dates. You wake the next morning with bruised hips, sore feet, and a firm understanding that Carthaginian markets are not for the weak of heart, or coin pouch, but there's no time to dwell. Before you can so much as stretch, a neighbour pokes his head through the attic hatch and barks something urgent. You catch 2 words, training yard and hurry. You're about to witness, or be dragged into, a Carthaginian military drill. You're led downhill toward the outer edge of the city, where the noise of commerce fades into the sharp, measured clatter of wooden weapons and shouting voices. a flat expanse of dirt ringed with half-broken columns, and an audience of mostly bored children and curious dogs opens before you. This is no parade ground, just a practice yard. But even from the edge, you can tell it's serious business. Pairs of young men and boys square off in the sun, wooden spears clashing, feet sliding through the dust. A trainer walks among them, whacking shins with a switch and shouting instructions with the glee of someone who hasn't been punched in years. You try to linger near the edge, but a hand lands on your back. A very firm hand, belonging to a man with biceps like amphorae and a nose that's clearly been broken more than once. He hands you a spear. You hold it upside down. He sighs. Welcome to the training yard. You're paired with a boy who can't be more than 16, but he moves like he was born holding a weapon. He jabs, you flinch. He jabs again. You yelp. The third jab clips your elbow. He apologizes, in a voice that's probably deeper than yours. Fun fact, while Carthage relied heavily on mercenaries in times of war, it also maintained militias composed of citizens, especially wealthier ones who could afford their own equipment. Young men were expected to train, drill, and be ready to defend the city if needed. Your trainer circles back, muttering something about posture and don't die yet. He demonstrates a stance, wide feet, lowered hips, chin tucked. You try to copy it. You look like you're about to sit down on an invisible goat. The drill continues. You lunge. You miss. You try again. You hit something. A target. A stationary wooden one, granted, but still. Success. Then the wind changes, the dust swirls, and you sneeze so hard you nearly fall into the spear rack. By now, sweat clings to your arms. Your tunic is sticking in places no tunic should stick, and your legs are beginning to shake. Around you, the other trainees show varying levels of exhaustion, but most still look impressively coordinated. One flips his spear behind his back just to show off. He's rewarded with a slap from the instructor and a round of applause from his peers. Suddenly, a horn sounds. The group freezes. A new figure enters the yard. Older, armoured, his bronze-plated chest catching the sun like a mirror. A commander. He says something stern and rapid, pacing slowly. The trainees snap to attention. You do too, though you're not entirely sure what you're standing at attention for. He gestures to a large chalked circle drawn in the dirt. Two young men step inside and begin to spar using full-speed strikes. The clatter is sharp, the footwork precise. Dust clouds rise with every dodge and pivot. You watch, mesmerised, until the trainer claps next to your ear and points at the ring. Number no, surely he doesn't mean you. Yes, he does. Before you can protest, you're nudged forward. The circle is closer now, hotter, drier. You grip your wooden spear and step in feeling like a very nervous bean. Your opponent? The deep-voiced teenager again. He grins politely. You attempt a confident nod. It comes out as a terrified blink. The match begins. He lunges. You sidestep, miraculously. You jab. He blocks. You jab again. You drop your spear. A child watching nearby starts giggling. You scoop up your weapon and try again, this time leading with a low sweep. He hops over it like he's done this 1,000 times, which he probably has. Then, unexpectedly, you land a light tap on his shoulder. He nods, respectful, encouraging. This is the high point of your combat career. Because 10 seconds later he feints left, spins right, and taps your rib so hard you almost sit down from shock. You stagger backward. The circle claps. You bow, or maybe collapse. Either way, you're escorted from the ring and given a water skin that tastes like dust, but you gulp it down like ambrosia. Scholars still debate the exact structure of Carthaginian citizen training. Some believe formal academies existed. Others think it was more neighbourhood-based, with drills organised by veteran soldiers. But all agree on this. Carthage took war seriously, even in peace. You sit on a low wall watching the next match, feeling your bruises settle into place. A boy beside you offers a roasted cricket on a stick. You take it. You've stopped questioning food here. As the sun dips lower, training winds down. Weapons are racked. Sand is swept. The trainer claps everyone into a loose circle and mutters a short prayer, likely to Baal Hammon. You bow your head with the others, not because you believe, but because your ribs still hurt, and you figure it can't hurt. You limp back into the city, weapon returned, pride dented but intact. People pass you without a glance. To them, you're just another dusty trainee walking home with sore feet and a face full of sand, and you realise, today, you are. The aches in your arms and legs have just started to settle when, of course, someone insists you come along to another event. This time, it's not work, not combat. It's a festival, one of Carthage's lunar rites. You're told it'll be beautiful, peaceful, and only a little strange, which is a pretty good summary of most things here so far. You agree to go. Mostly because the woman inviting you is already painting her face with silver dust, and you're too tired to argue. As dust settles, you follow her and a growing stream of neighbours through winding streets toward a wide plaza near the water's edge. Torches are already being lit, tall woven baskets of flame swaying like reeds in the evening breeze. The moon is climbing behind thin clouds, casting a pale wash over everything. You're handed a garland of herbs. It smells like mint and something faintly musky. You sniff. A man behind you says, "It keeps the wrong spirits away." You don't ask what the right spirits are. The festival begins not with drums or shouts, but a low humming chant. It seems to rise from the stones themselves. A dozen white-robed figures step into the centre of the plaza, forming a loose circle. They begin swaying, slowly at first, then more rhythmically, their voices blending in a hypnotic drone that wraps around your thoughts like warm mist. This is a lunar rite for Tanit, you're told, celebrated during certain moon phases, meant to honour her power over fertility, fate, and nighttime safety. It involves offerings, song, and what can only be described as interpretive dance for the divine. A woman passes by with a tray of incense sticks. She offers one. You light it from a nearby torch. The smoke curls into the sky, joining dozens of other scented tendrils. The plaza is slowly engulfed in swirling fog that smells like pine, citrus, and burnt sugar. Fun fact, Carthaginian religious festivals often blended serious ritual with a deeply theatrical atmosphere. Some scholars believe these nighttime ceremonies served both sacred and social purposes, renewing community bonds, offering a kind of spiritual catharsis, and creating space for shared storytelling. As the dancers spin faster, their robes flare like sails in the wind. One of them, blindfolded, twirls dangerously close to a brazier. Everyone holds their breath. She stops, just short. Applause, or possibly relief. You're nudged toward a low table covered in offerings, carved figures, braided bread, jugs of honeyed wine, and small bundles of dried flowers. You don't have anything to contribute, except the smushed waxed fish charm still in your pouch. After a long moment of consideration, you place it gently among the others. A woman beside you notices, nods solemnly, and whispers something that sounds like, "Everything is worthy." Nearby a child plays a 3-stringed lyre, not particularly well. A group of elders sit cross-legged, murmuring what might be poems or recipes or warnings. One stops and stares directly at you, then smiles and says something about the moon always watching. You pretend that's comforting. Scholars remain divided on how literal the Carthaginians were about lunar symbolism. Some argue the moon was seen as a divine messenger. Others believe it represented cycles, change, and feminine power. Either way, tonight it seems to govern everything: mood, movement, and more than one person's wine consumption. Speaking of which, someone hands you a cup. You sip. It tastes like fermented dates and cinnamon with a hint of something herbal that makes your tongue go slightly numb. You blink. A second cup appears. You blink slower. Now people are dancing. Not the white-robed priests, just everyone. A man with 3 teeth is twirling a woman wearing 6 necklaces and no shoes. 2 children hop in a circle, arms raised like they're summoning something. Even a goat joins in, more or less by accident. You're dragged into the circle by your neighbour, who laughs and claps until you start shuffling awkwardly in rhythm. You raise your arms. You sway. You twirl, sort of. Someone cheers. You step on your own foot and stumble. A cheer again. You are now apparently part of the entertainment. The music crescendos. Drums clapping, the high whine of flutes. Then suddenly, silence. A single voice begins to chant. It's the elder from before, holding a carved staff. His voice is rasping, ancient, melodic. Everyone bows their heads. You follow suit, unsure if this is prayer or poetry or a weather report. Either way, it's beautiful. The chant ends. The crowd exhales. Someone calls out, "Tanit!" and everyone responds as one. "Protectress!" It echoes across the plaza, into the streets, up the walls, and maybe into the heavens. Lanterns are lit. Clay bowls filled with oil and floating wicks. They're placed along the edges of the plaza, turning the space into a glowing pond of gold. Children chase their reflections. Old men nod in time with fading music. A woman places her hand on your shoulder and whispers something that might have been a blessing or just, "You looked like you needed this." And honestly, you did. You sit on the edge of the plaza as the crowd begins to thin, the smoke disperses, and the moon rides higher overhead. Your muscles ache from dancing, your lips tingle from the wine, and your heart feels strangely full. You came expecting a spectacle. What you found was a city praying with its feet, singing with its eyes closed, and dancing like the gods were laughing beside them. And maybe they were. You wake up with your face pressed against a smooth tile, your legs tangled in someone's shawl, and a faint drumbeat still echoing in your head. Either the festival continued without you, or your dreams were exceptionally musical. Judging by the bits of ash clinging to your tunic and the faint herbal scent in your hair, it was real. You sit up slowly. The sun is already climbing. You're still in the courtyard where the lunar festival ended, though most of the crowd has melted away like wax. A few vendors are sweeping up petals and wax drippings. A rooster picks at a piece of spilled fig cake. A small child stares at you, then pokes your foot. You nod in greeting. He runs away. Time to return to your normal routine. Except something's off. You try asking for directions back to your lodging, but the woman you approach blinks at you blankly. You point, gesture, pantomime sleeping. She frowns, then laughs, then says something in rapid-fire Punic that might mean, "You poor lost creature." She walks away. You find someone else. Same result. More pointing, more frowning. Eventually you realise what's happening. No one understands your words, and you're starting to run out of pantomimes. You've hit the language wall. Up until now you've been getting by with smiles, nods, and a bit of charade-level theatrics. But today, it's not working. Today, you're truly, deeply lost, and not just in the city. Fun fact, the Punic language, a descendant of Phoenician, was spoken throughout Carthage and its colonies. It used a consonant-heavy alphabet and rarely recorded vowels, making it notoriously difficult to reconstruct. Today, scholars still debate its exact grammar and pronunciation. You try Latin, blank stares. You try Greek. One man raises an eyebrow, then walks off muttering. You say Rome. Two children throw pebbles at you. You decide not to say Rome again. You're hungry. You're thirsty. You're not entirely sure if your sandals are still your sandals or just a similar pair you found during the festival. It's one of those days. Eventually you approach a scribe's booth, hoping the man with ink-stained fingers will understand anything you say. You point to your mouth, then to a water jug. He blinks. Then, miraculously, he replies, slowly, with an accent thick as honey but intelligible. "You lost?" You nearly cry from relief. He speaks a little Latin, enough to understand you're a confused traveller, that you've lost your way, and that you haven't eaten since last night's herbal wine and dancing marathon. He laughs and calls someone over, a young woman with gold earrings and a patient smile. She grabs your wrist, gently but firmly, and says something to the scribe, who shrugs and says, "She will help." You nod. You've stopped questioning gifts like this. She leads you through the twisting alleys, pausing to buy a flat cake from a street vendor and handing it to you without a word. You bite in. It's warm, sweet, and filled with crushed nuts and what might be apricots. It tastes like stability. She points out things as you walk. A potter's kiln, a fig tree, a cracked fresco of a ship. She names each one slowly. You repeat her words badly. She corrects you. You try again. She grins. You move on. Eventually she brings you to a small open-air classroom, really just a covered platform where a few children sit in a semicircle, around an older woman with a board and a wax tablet. Your guide gestures for you to sit. You do. You spend the next hour learning basic Punic. Greetings, numbers, names for food and water, how to ask where the bathroom is, critical. You stutter. You struggle. You accidentally call a goat a grandmother. Laughter all around. You laugh too. Scholars remain divided on whether second language acquisition was common in ancient Carthage. Evidence suggests that many merchants were multilingual, especially those dealing with Greeks, Numidians or Romans. But everyday people, that's harder to say. What's certain is that immersion works better than textbooks. By midday you can ask for water, offer a greeting, and thank someone without accidentally proposing marriage. You're handed a tiny clay pendant by one of the children. It's shaped like a fish. Probably a blessing, possibly a joke. Either way, you wear it. You leave the classroom with your guide still smiling at you, though now there's something different in her eyes. Respect, perhaps, or mild amusement. Either works. The sky is high and bright as you walk together toward the city centre. She gestures to a well and lets you draw the water. You do. It's heavy. She nods approvingly. A man nearby asks her something about you. She answers. He laughs. You hear the word stray. That tracks. She brings you to the corner near your lodging, points down the street, and says a word you now recognise. Home. You nod. You thank her. Toody. She raises an eyebrow. You try again. Towdy. Better. She nods once, then turns and walks away. You watch her go, fish charm around your neck, tiny words rattling in your head like puzzle pieces looking for their place, and you realise something. You're not just surviving anymore. You're adapting. Slowly. Imperfectly. Embarrassingly. But adapting nonetheless. You return to your attic lodging just as the sun tips westward, casting golden light through the clay-slit windows. It filters across the floorboards in thin shafts, illuminating every grain of dust and every wrinkle in your exhausted tunic. You drop onto your mat and let your brain float, half remembering your new vocabulary, half wondering if that classroom fish pendant is supposed to keep you from getting robbed again. You think you'll rest. But then someone says a name, Dido. The older woman who shares your sleeping corner is talking to a neighbour, both of them sitting with their backs against the wall, sorting lentils with calloused fingers. The name Dido pops up again, followed by a slow, reverent pause in the conversation. You perk up. Queen Dido, the legendary founder of Carthage. You've heard of her, of course, usually with caveats, Roman side notes and Virgilian embellishments. But here, she's not just a story, she's an origin. You point to the name. Dido? You ask. They look up. One woman raises her eyebrows. Then, after a quiet moment, she gestures for you to sit, and they begin to tell you their version. Not the one with golden hair and tragic romance, but the Carthaginian Dido, Alyssa in their tongue. A woman not defined by her love for a Trojan prince, but by her cunning, her leadership, her refusal to kneel before kings or gods or Rome. Fun fact, Carthage's own sources about Dido, at least what little survives, paint her as a canny queen who fled her homeland of Tyre, negotiated land from a local Berber king, and founded the city by cutting an ox hide into strips thin enough to encircle an entire hill. Smart, practical, ruthless. She was not soft, says the older woman, flattening a lentil beneath her thumb for emphasis. She did not cry for men. Men cried for her. Another woman joins in, miming Dido arriving by ship, pointing to the sea, cutting the ox hide. Her voice rises as she reenacts the moment she outwitted the local chief. Everyone laughs, not mockingly, but with a warmth reserved for clever ancestors. You're handed a small carving, old wood, shaped like a woman with a crescent crown. Alyssa, the younger neighbour says, tapping the figure's chest. Our mother. You hold it gently, surprised at how heavy it feels in your hand for something so small. Scholars still debate the historical Dido. Was she real? Was she myth made flesh? The Roman poet Virgil certainly reimagined her as a love-struck queen undone by Aeneas, but here no one mentions Aeneas, not once. They talk about Dido's shipbuilding, her laws, her refusal to marry again, her final sacrifice, though even that part, they say, is full of symbols, not literal flame. She gave her life to protect Carthage, someone murmurs. Not for love. For us? A small child sitting in the corner repeats the phrase. The older woman smiles and ties a scrap of red thread around the girl's wrist. A quiet blessing, a reminder. You glance outside. In the distance, Bursa Hill glows in the falling light. That's where Dido's ox hide is said to have stretched, where she built her citadel. You imagine her there, standing tall, wind pulling at her robes, eyes scanning the coastline, not for lovers, but for enemies, for trade, for land. Your thoughts are interrupted when a man enters carrying a loaf of bread, a wineskin, and a small wax tablet etched with today's port records. He joins the group, setting the bread down and muttering something about Rome being greedy again, The room murmurs. The name Dido floats again like a shield. You break bread with them. It's coarse, seeded with cumin and maybe coriander. The wine is sour and slightly salty, like it's been aged too close to the ocean. But it suits the conversation. A boy near the doorway picks up a reed flute and starts a soft tune, low, spiralling, as if it were winding up from deep below the city. The lentil sorting continues. A few people hum along. The figure of Alyssa is passed from hand to hand, resting for a moment in each palm, like a thread weaving the room together. You close your eyes. You didn't expect to feel this. A sense of inheritance. Not by blood or birth, but by proximity. You're not Carthaginian, but you've walked their streets, eaten their food, learned their words, stumbled through their festivals and bruised your ribs in their training yards. And now you sit in their stories. You open your eyes and glance at the Alyssa carving one more time. Strong nose, sharp brow, no smile. She wouldn't have survived a day as a myth, but she thrived as a founder. The morning after, the tale of Queen Dido finds you walking barefoot along a path that should never be walked barefoot. You didn't plan it this way. You simply overslept. Your sandals were borrowed by your bunkmate's cousin, allegedly just for a quick errand, and now you're padding down a dusty road outside the city, stubbing your toes on every historical rock along the way. Where are you going? To a shrine, one your neighbour insisted you see. It's important, she said, old even for us. When you asked what kind of shrine it was, she just tapped her chest, pointed to the horizon, and handed you a bundle of figs for the walk. So here you are. The road slopes upward, winding away from the stone walls of Carthage. The noise fades behind you. No cartwheels, no shouting merchants, no goats challenging each other to headbutt contests. Just the rustling of dry shrubs and the occasional bark of a dog somewhere in the hills. After about a half-hour hike, longer, if you count all the hobbling, you see it. A cluster of stones arranged in a semicircle on a rise above the coast. At first glance, it looks like a ruined picnic spot, but as you approach, you notice the carvings, crescent moons, palm fronds, faint lines that resemble flames or wings, symbols of Tanit again, carved into the stone with care. No temple, no roof, just sky, stones, and silence. You take a seat. The rocks are warm beneath you, sun-soaked and ancient. You unwrap a fig and bite in. It's sweet, soft, filled with tiny seeds that crunch just enough to remind you that you're alive. Fun fact, outside the bustling temples of Carthage were dozens, perhaps hundreds of small personal shrines. Some were simple field altars, others were offerings tucked into tree hollows or buried beneath family homes. Religion here wasn't confined to spectacle, it was woven into the land. You look around. Others have been here recently. Bits of herbs lie scattered around the stones. A feather, a worn charm, a tiny clay figurine that looks like a fish, or maybe a bird. You place your own fig stem on the altar. It's all you have, and somehow it feels like enough. The sea breeze carries voices from below, children shouting, maybe swimming. A dog barks again, then quiet. Only wind, leaves, and the crackle of dry twigs underfoot. You close your eyes for a moment. The warmth of the stone seeps into your spine. Your feet ache. Your shoulders still remember yesterday's sparring match. But something about this place makes the soreness feel earned. Then, of course, you step on a thorn. You yelp, hop, fall back onto the stone. The silence bursts. Somewhere a bird cackles. You glare at it. It does not apologize. You sit back up, nursing your foot. A man arrives, middle-aged, quiet, carrying a pouch of grain and a bundle of fresh herbs. He nods to you, sets his offering down and sits across from you without a word. After a few minutes, he pulls out a reed pipe and begins to play. It's not a melody exactly, more like a conversation in sound, soft notes drifting between the stones. You listen, you relax, you forget about the thorn. He finishes, bows his head toward the sea and rises to leave. He pauses as he passes you, looks at your bare bandaged foot, and offers you one of his sandals. You shake your head. He shrugs, smiles, and walks away, barefoot. Scholars still debate the extent to which Carthaginians practiced personal piety outside official temples. Some evidence suggests strong domestic ritual life, particularly among women and farmers, while others argue that public ceremonies dominated. Yet here, with nothing but stones and sea air, belief feels deeply personal. You stay a little longer, letting the wind speak over the stones. Eventually hunger calls. You unwrap your last fig, eat it slowly and begin the walk back, carefully, one foot limping, both hands cradling whatever piece that little shrine managed to give you. Along the road, a woman gathering herbs waves to you. You wave back. She gestures to your foot, then to a patch of wild mint growing beside a rock. You pluck a few leaves, crush them, and rub them against your skin. It stings, then cools. You thank her. She smiles and disappears into the brush. By the time you reach the gates of Carthage again, the sun is high, the streets are waking, and the world is loud once more. But your pace is slower now, not just from the thorn, but because for a moment out there among the stones, you were still. You return to the city just in time for dinner, or, more accurately, just in time for what should have been dinner, before it transforms into something closer to a shouting match disguised as a meal. You limp into the courtyard of your temporary lodging, foot still sore from your sacred thorn encounter, and are greeted by the smell of roasted eggplant, chickpea mash, and spiced lentil stew. Your stomach growls like a temple lion. The family who took you in has set a long, low table in the central room, ringed with cushions and clay bowls. A brazier glows in the corner, casting warm light across the faces of the guests already seated. There's wine, flatbread, and a lot of gesturing. So far, so good. You take your place at the edge, trying to melt into the scenery. A bowl of warm stew is pushed toward you. You whisper a quiet thank you in your best, still clumsy Punic. Someone nods approvingly. Then a man at the head of the table says a word you now recognize, Rome, and everything shifts. What had been idle conversation sharpens into something with edges. The laughter dies down. The hand gestures get bigger. The wine pours faster. Two men, brothers maybe, begin arguing. One insists Rome can be managed and negotiated with, leveraged for trade and advantage. The other slams his hand on the table and declares, "They will eat us!" That one's easy to translate. Fun fact, Carthaginian politics were famously complex. Governed by a council of elders, the 100, 2 elected leaders called suffets, and an assembly of citizens, the system was balanced but tense. Debates over how to handle Rome were common, and only grew more heated as tensions escalated toward war. You sip your wine. It tastes like fermented raisins with a hint of despair. The bread goes stale in your mouth as the argument picks up steam. The merchant class voices caution. "Rome is a customer," one woman says, slicing a fig in half, "and customers become enemies when you raise the price." The military-minded neighbour retorts, "And enemies become neighbours when they build roads to your front gate." Someone laughs nervously. Another person spits into the fire. Across the room, an elderly man listens silently, arms crossed. When he finally speaks, the room quiets. He tells a story, in slow, rhythmic Punic, with pauses that let the words sink deep. You don't catch every word, but you understand the tone. It's not a story with a happy ending. It involves ships, a treaty broken, a port lost, a child who never came home. The table nods, solemn. A few people cross their arms. The word Sicily is whispered. You remember, the First Punic War has already happened. The second one is brewing. These people aren't debating the possibility of conflict. They're remembering one and dreading the next. Scholars remain divided on how unified Carthage was in its stance on Rome. Some argue the merchant elite wanted peace to preserve trade, while others, especially the military families, saw war as inevitable. The internal debate shaped the city's policies and ultimately its fate. Back at the table, the conversation shifts again. Someone brings up taxes, always a crowd pleaser. "Why are we funding ships that never leave port?" a woman asks. "Because when they do leave port, they keep the Romans out," someone fires back. You focus on your bowl. It's safer, but then someone asks you a question. The room turns, you freeze. A boy, barely old enough to tie his own sandals, points and asks, in slow, careful Punic, "What do you think?" "Do you trust Rome?" 100 faces turn to you. Even the fire seems to hold its breath. You scramble for words. You manage something like Rome talks, Carthage listens. Then Carthage must choose. You're not sure what you just said. Neither is anyone else. And then, unexpectedly, someone claps. The tension breaks. Laughter ripples. Wine is poured again. Someone hands you another bowl of stew as if your vague, awkward statement was somehow profound. You exhale. Later, as the dishes are cleared and the cushions rearranged for lounging, you overhear whispers about Hannibal, a name that cuts through the air like a dagger. The man across from you taps his temple, says the name again, and grins. You don't know the details yet, but you know the tone. Something is coming. You slip out into the night, head spinning not from the wine, but from the undercurrent you felt all evening. The weariness of a city bracing for something. You walk past shadowy doorways where voices still mutter politics over clay cups. Past shops where scribes write letters to colonies, letters filled with warnings or questions. Past guards who watch the streets a little too carefully. Back in your attic, you curl onto your mat, the distant sound of temple bells ringing out over the rooftops. You think of Dido, of naval drills, of moonlit chants and thorn-pricked feet, and now of Rome. Not some distant concept, but a name on every lip, a shape looming on the horizon, a shadow Carthage pretends not to see, even as it tightens its grip on the city's heart. You wake to firelight, but not your own. The attic is still and dark, your fellow lodgers asleep in tangled bundles of linen and limbs, but through the slits in the plastered wall, a dull orange glow pulses, unnatural, rhythmic, like breath caught mid-exhale. You sit up, and you smell it. Smoke. But not temple incense or cook fire drift. This is heavier, more bitter. Wood. Maybe pitch. Maybe something worse. You slip downstairs, sandals in hand, and step out into a courtyard glowing faintly with reflected light. Others are already up, heads craning toward the harbour. A few people mutter nervously. You hear the word navvies. Ship you follow the glow, past alleys where shutters slam, past goats being pulled indoors like skittish pets, past the bakery where you once saw a fig shaped like Dido's profile. The air is tense, not panicked yet, but tight. When you reach the harbour overlook, you see it. A Carthaginian ship, large, newly tarred, flames curling up its stern like ribbons, burning just offshore. It lists, groaning, black smoke pouring skyward as small boats circle it like vultures. You hear shouting, some in Punic, some in Latin. There's no formal rescue, just chaos. People hauling lines, barking orders, buckets being passed and dropped. Someone beside you mutters, Romans, a curse, a warning, a confirmation. Fun fact, Carthaginian ports were famously secure, but the tensions with Rome made any small incident, fire, theft, a drunken sailor's brawl, feel like the spark that might ignite something greater, especially in the years just before the Second Punic War. You watch as a younger man, bare-chested, eyes wild, shouts about sabotage, about spies. His voice cracks, but people nod, others whisper, stories spread like the fire itself, and then a hush falls. An elder man, stooped, robed, wrapped in a red and gold mantle, steps forward. No one announces him, they just part. You don't know his name, but you feel the weight of it. He raises his arms toward the burning ship and begins to speak. Not loudly, not dramatically, just evenly, like a teacher reciting a lesson. The words come in slow Punic. Some phrases you catch. Before. This. There were others. The gods are patient. Rome is not. And finally, the city has seen fire before. The crowd listens. Some nod, some weep. Some stare at the ground like the stones might answer back. He continues, this time with a story, perhaps the same one he told at the dinner you attended nights ago. You catch glimpses, a siege, a betrayal, a lost treaty, a temple that stood when the earth still burned with salt. Scholars still debate whether Carthage ever truly expected peace with Rome after the First Punic War. While some treaties were signed, the atmosphere remained brittle. Rome's expansionism and Carthage's refusal to kneel made another war feel inevitable, like thunder waiting above the horizon. The ship cracks loudly, then begins to sink. The flames hiss where they meet the sea. A final flare like a dying breath illuminates the faces around you, anxious, hardened, resigned. A mother clutches her son's shoulder, a sailor spits into the dirt, a girl lights a candle and presses it into a wall niche. The city responds not with screams, but with rituals, with silence. You feel someone tap your elbow. It's the neighbour who brought you to the shrine yesterday. She points toward the hills. Old fires, she says, Always return. You walk with her back through the city, this time avoiding the main streets. You pass quiet neighbourhoods where people are already lighting offerings. Tiny clay lamps appear on steps, windowsills, wall cracks. Some flicker in pairs, others form rows like teeth. You don't talk, neither does she. The silence says everything. By the time you reach your quarter, the sky's just beginning to pale. No rooster crows, no carts rumble, just the low clang of a watch bell. Your foot throbs again. The thorn prick from the shrine walk now tender and hot. A coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe this is how Carthage speaks, through aches, smoke, omens, and burned ships. Back in the attic, no one sleeps. Your bunkmates sit in a circle staring at the wall. Someone hands you a cup of water. Someone else says a name you don't recognise. Maybe the ship's captain. Maybe a warning. A dog howls once in the distance, then silence again. And now, in this stillness, it hits you. The gods may still walk among the people here. But Rome is sailing closer by the day. You lie back on your mat, wide-eyed, the taste of ash still in your mouth. You clutch the tannet token beneath your tunic. It's warm, not comforting, just present. Carthage is not panicked, not yet, but it is watching and waiting. You don't sleep, not really. The sounds of the night, once a lullaby of dogs, prayer bells and far-off sandals, now stretch too thin. You lie still, listening to the creaks of the building around you, to the sighs of people pretending to rest, and to the absence of something, ease. You rise before dawn. There's no instruction, no reason. You simply feel pulled. The city isn't awake yet, but it's not asleep either. A strange limbo. The sky turns from black to deep blue. You dress quietly, wrap yourself in a borrowed shawl and head toward the streets. As you walk, the mist begins to rise, thin and low, clinging to the stones. It softens the hard outlines of the buildings, turns shadows into ghosts. You see lanterns flickering in corners, a woman sweeping her doorstep in silence, a priest kneeling in front of a shrine too small to name. You pass a man lighting oil lamps outside his stall. He nods. You nod back. No one says anything. It's just past dawn when you hear the horns, one, then two. Long, low, not alarms, announcements. Carthage is stirring. You turn a corner and see a group gathering in the main square. Merchants, dockhands, temple attendants, and curious children. They cluster beneath a high wooden scaffold where a messenger in green robes unfurls a scroll and reads aloud. You catch words. Not all. Enough. Ships. Rome. Movement. Sicily. The message is formal, but the meaning is not. Rome's navy is expanding. Carthage will respond. Trade routes may be adjusted. Men of age should remain alert. More drills, more duty. You step back, your shoulder brushing against a man holding a spear. He looks down. He doesn't smile. He simply says, in slow Punic, again. The crowd begins to disperse, not with panic, but with weary purpose. You trail behind them, not sure where you're going anymore. You pass a bakery where the smell of fresh bread tries nobly to cut through the mood. A girl chases a chicken. A dog barks at its own echo. The world still turns, but slower now. Back in your quarter, the neighbours are already packing supplies. A woman rolls up fabric bolts and tucks them beneath the floor. Someone else seals a jar of olives with wax. You help without being asked. Later, your host sits beside you with a bowl of lentils. He doesn't offer commentary, just food, and a quiet companionship. You eat side by side, listening to birds call out overhead like nothing has changed. Eventually he reaches into a pouch and hands you something. A small square of cloth, embroidered with a crescent and palm. Tannet symbols. Not fancy, not new, just meaningful. You take it and nod. He pats your back once and walks away, leaving you with the gift and the weight of the morning's news. You think of everything that's happened, your first lost day, the washing trough, the beetle mat, the burning incense, the spears, the sweet chickpeas, the argument at dinner, the fish amulet, the shrine on the hill, the people. You never belonged here. And yet now, in this moment, sitting in a quiet courtyard with the smell of olive oil in the air and war whispered on the wind, you're not entirely separate from them either. You've witnessed a city not in crisis but in ritual, not collapsing but bracing. Carthage doesn't crumble, it prepares. And you won't last much longer. Your feet hurt, your clothes are unravelling, your language is barely functional. But for now, for this breath of a moment, you sit in the still beating heart of a city that the world will one day burn and bury, but not forget. Because Carthage endures in memory, in myths and stones and stories retold by fig light, and now in you. You lie back as the sun climbs and the streets begin to fill again. People walk with purpose, no rush, just knowing, and you close your eyes, listening, to sandals on stone, to voices naming the gods, to the breath of a city that won't sleep just because you do. Let yourself exhale now. The streets are fading behind you. The smoke, the sun, the clatter of sandals, it all drifts off like incense in the air. Even the cries of the port and the laughter of children washing clothes melt into the background. You're not on a mat in an attic anymore. You're floating in the cool air above the sea, where Carthage once stretched its fingers across the waves. The city grows smaller beneath you, quieter, calmer. The rooftops blur. The courtyards grow still. Even the gods, with their crescent symbols and ash-smeared altars, seem to lower their gaze, allowing you this gentle departure. You've carried the day on your shoulders through sweat, language, laughter, and smoke. But now you don't have to carry anything, not even your thoughts. Let them go. Let them settle like dust on old mosaic tiles. Breathe in, breathe out. No more fires, no more fig cakes, no more thorn-pricked feet. Just you, and the quiet. If sleep hasn't found you yet, it's near, watching from the doorway like a patient neighbour, waiting for you to close your eyes completely. Let it. Let the noise fade. Let the city vanish. Let the story fold softly around you like warm linen, and rest. You're not in ancient Carthage anymore. You're here, safe, still, and very, very far from war. End of script. Sweet dreams.